Hi, everyone. It's Nancy Beauvair here with Agapi Marketing and Consulting, and I'd like to welcome you to our next in our series of expert interviews. And today I'm happy to have with me Patty Miller. Patty is the owner and operator of MillerNet HR Solutions, and she is fully designated with her CHRP.
Good
So welcome,
morning.
Patty. Thanks very much for joining. I think that I'd mentioned to you when I asked you to participate in this interview, I'd mentioned that I typically try to bring in people who provide support for the marketing aspects of their business. But if you don't have a business foundation, then you really don't have a business to worry about anyway. So I thought that your skill set would be a very important thing to bring in and to help educate our listeners about really the ins and outs and ups and downs of HR. So welcome, and perhaps you could just tell us a little bit about your experience. I know that you've been 16 years in the business.
Yes, so I've been 16 years in human resources. The first 5 of them, I was selling HR services and a recruiter and headhunter. And for the next 5, I was the HR manager at an engineering firm where I had to do everything, and I loved it. It was up to 220 employees. And then for the last 6 years, I've been an HR consultant where I partner with small and mid-sized businesses, adding any HR value that they need for their business, all by the hour. So my business model is a little bit different, and it comes from my time when I was the the HR manager at the engineering firm, and I had a fantastic, empowering area manager who let me do anything that I thought was healthy and positive for the business. So I managed everything from recruiting to policy development to people management to coaching to leadership, succession planning, performance management, compensation, and I got to see how I rolled out all these initiatives for a business that never had HR in the first place. So when I left them, I thought there has to be good businesses out there that need HR, perhaps not necessarily full-time or even consistently part-time, but when they need HR, they need HR. And so that's how I started MillerNet HR Solutions. So my business model is a little bit different where I provide any service that I do, and it's full spectrum HR solutions by the hour. Another part of my business that is unique is I am very solid in my recruiting side. I find HR is usually 2 camps. They're either the recruitment arm or the HR management arm, and they don't always cross over. Whereas I find that you're setting the company culture up in the tone of that interview, and you're also promoting the company brand right from that very first interview, and that's very, very important for the company. And I come on site and I will interview on behalf of that client's brand. So Patty Miller with ABC Company or whoever I represent, which is great for the business that way.
Right, right. So that you seem like you are part of their enterprise, which gives a more, I'm sure, a better feel for the potential prospect that's being headhunted.
Absolutely, and I have to also very very intimately know the job I'm recruiting for. I need to know all the technical skills, the soft skills, why they're going to be a good fit. And it's not uncommon; it's very common that I'm always asked, "What do you like about working here?" And I have to talk about that client as if I'm their employee. And after a lot of interviews, I've had hiring managers look at me and say, "Wow, you did such a good job at selling our company. I feel extra proud working here." Or I might be, my interviews are for me at Fair, and they may go, "Wow, that's quite the interview. I don't know if I'd get hired. You're a tough cookie." But that. My point is it's not to determine if they're a nice person. I need to determine if they're a qualified person. I take it
Right,
for granted that they're nice already.
right, right. But are they the good fit for the job? Are they the best person for the
Right,
job?
right.
Now, maybe I can ask you, Patty, as well, because you mentioned about the variety of duties that you were fortunate enough to have at that engineering firm. I mean, that sounds to me like the dream job, to have that much latitude within your job. But typically, I can't speak for all of my audience, but typically, I always thought of HR as somebody who handled the recruitment process, the hiring, the firing, benefits, things like that. Now, you talked about that wide range of things. So, can you maybe explain a little bit about the latitude within the HR industry then, that and the types of services that a good HR professional such as yourself actually can provide for a small
Sure.
or mid-sized business?
So I will have to say I know nothing about benefits. I never managed that. That to me is administration, and I think that is a bit of a misunderstanding that if you manage the benefit program for a company, that is HR. HR professionals need to have a business mindset versus let's just manage payroll and compensation and benefits. So that part has never been a part of my tool what am I going to call my tools? I've never used that. So what I feel is more important from an HR functionality for businesses. And if you've got over 5 people in your employment, you should be entertaining a policy and procedures handbook. And people might go, really? I don't want to be that type of company where we've got all these rules and all of that. But it's a business tool that is very important and protects the interests of the business. So a handbook should outline for the employees on how to behave, how to perform, what will happen if they fail to meet those expectations, and it's tailored to the way you do your business. And it helps managers ensure that across the organization that all issues are handled consistently. So if the need ever arises, a well-written handbook is a first step for defending the employer against any legal claims, since all employees have been given the handbook at the time of hiring, and they understand what the rules are. It also
Can I interject just for a sec here, Patty, on that handbook thing? I would think you're right. It's obviously kind of a blueprint for the way that the business operates and would protect their interests. But I would think that really it also protects the employees, because then they know their expectations. They know
absolutely.
what parameters
It's a tool for both of them, and this is where all employee handbooks should entertain having or should contain. That it's an environment, the employer provides an environment that's free of harassment, discrimination, inequality, all of that. So it's setting the tone of that, where the employer is providing you an environment that is a safe environment for you. And also other things like, how do you request vacation time, respect in the workplace, dress code, social media, distracted driving policies. Nowadays with social media, texting and being on your own personal device can be a problem for some employers, where they feel productivity may be lost. And this is one way of having all of that there. Depending on the industry that you're in, safety is also a big concern. So you want to talk about that we've got to be compliant with our safety policies and mandates as well. So that spins off to performance management, and that is also, it's a two-way street as well. I find that it's interesting where employees, they show up for their annual review, they copy and paste parts of their review from last year, and then they are expecting a raise. Whereas I've had clients say, it takes me an hour to prepare for a proper performance evaluation, and then they want a raise, and they haven't even shown me why they've been adding value to the business. So if I was to provide any counsel to an employee, is I call it a me file, or just have a running document, whether it's electronic or on paper, where you write down the date, and even a one or two liner about an obstacle you overcame, a proud achievement, a difficult situation, an accolade that you would want to document. So when it comes time to doing your evaluation form, you've got all of that content for the last 12 months, because human nature, we only remember the last 3, of course. And a proper supervisor should be doing the same, where they're documenting what they feel are notable achievements and obstacles that you've overcome as well over the course of the year. So nothing should be a surprise when you do a performance evaluation.
Right, right. So these are some of the areas that you assist small and medium-sized businesses with, then, is the development of these policy and procedure
Absolutely.
handbooks and some of
Full
the
custom
performance
policy
evaluations then as
development of
well.
any type. So that can be an offer letter, that can be a termination letter, that can be a custom policy or performance evaluation forms, that can be absolutely anything, social media, distracted driving, as we talked about. But something that a lot of companies don't do very often, only 10% of companies do this, is exit interviews. And they're a very valuable exercise to determine why that employee is leaving and to capture critical last words and impressions of why they're leaving. And what comes of this is trends can then be identified, and this information can be used to make improvements for the betterment of the organization. So it's a wonderful tool that all businesses can do. And so I get called to do that for departing employees. And because I'm not the management team, that I find that the employees speak very candidly with me, and I can uncover a lot of really interesting facts and observations of that employee's tenure and experience with the company. But to take it one step further, instead of waiting to find out why employees are leaving, I do something that I call a pulse review. And that is basically where it's conducted with core team members of the team, both tenured and new. And I uncover what's working, what's not working. I determine if they've got, their engagement levels, if they have all the tools they need for success, if they're getting proper and timely feedback on their performance, and find out what they feel is working, what they'd like to see continued, and perhaps I call it stop, start, keep. What they maybe want to see, start, what they want to see stopped, and what they want to see maintained as part of their employment with the organization. And this is a game changer activity, and it's also a mirror that goes back to the management team, because it reflects back to them what's working and what's not working, and they have to be willing and able to receive said information. But what's powerful is the analytics that are determined from that. It can be I've had a situation where a VP wasn't the right person for the job, and a reorg was sparked because of that. And this individual was put in another area of the business where his skills were capitalized on. He was a fantastic technical writer. He kept doing the RFPs and RFQs for the business. And a new individual who was sort of the go-to person, by default, was elevated to the manager. And it was a win-win for everybody in the business, improved, and engagement improved. And when people are engaged, productivity does improve. It's a scientific fact.
Well, that's right. You can't always take that, the round peg and force it into the square hole, right? Yeah. Now, it's interesting that you say that, because it's probably 25 years ago now. I actually, as an entrepreneur, would go out into small businesses and do these kinds of evaluations. And because I was coming from outside the business, people were more prone to open up and be perfectly honest, because they were guaranteed the anonymity of being able to say what they thought and not have it come back and bite them. So is that something that you provide with these pulse reviews that you do, that the people do know that whatever they say with you kind of
Yeah.
the results will be passed on? But it's not like Nancy said
good
Sam
question.
was a jerk.
That I can do that under full disclosure, or I can do that under complete confidentiality. And for the example I was talking about with the reorg, I asked about every single manager and everything was in full confidence. And it's true, when I gave back the document to the president, there were no names, there were no initials. It was just a summary of what everybody was answering for the specific question. So they would see the question, and they would see all the responses, and they didn't know who said those types of responses. So it did encourage people to speak more freely, and I think there is benefit of knowing that it can come under full confidence, and that they're not going to get their hands slapped or be treated any differently for speaking up. We don't want to penalize people for speaking up, because it does take courage to do so, and and a strong manager also needs to leave their ego at the door if they had some constructive criticism brought out about that. And that's where leaders need to, and especially business owners, need to identify sometimes their leaders and the people that they're entrusting their business to, especially small and mid-sized businesses. They need to ensure that they surround themselves with the very best of leaders that have the back of that president, so they've got, so they are not sabotaging business in any way. I do see it a little too often, and it is a disappointment, where a lot of mid-sized businesses are not calling on the carpet some of their leaders and some of their activities. And that's another thing that I do, is coaching. I say to all supervisors and leaders and owners, if you are going to be in this role, you owe it to your people to give them timely and constructive feedback. You coach in private, and you praise in public. And you need to do that in a timely manner. It's the same idea of, the dog peed on the carpet and you rub that in 2 days later. That's not going to be effective. So, and take out emotion and only talk about facts. So you would say, Joe, you've been late 4 times in the last 2 weeks, and it's becoming a bit of a pattern. Can you help me understand why you haven't been on time? Because there are many reasons why Joe may not be on time, and it could be everything from doesn't care to he's got some personal issues, something that you might need to alter that reason why.
Right. Well, and I think that HR is called HR obviously for a reason, the human part of it, and all of us being human, we know that there are always going to be personality conflicts between some people. So as a business owner, I might think that Paul is the greatest person in the whole world, but he just doesn't have that connectivity with the people that he's supposed to be managing. So perhaps, maybe I don't see that, and I can see that would be a big benefit then to bring somebody like yourself in to actually do that review and bring that
absolutely. Those
it.
pulse reviews, I can't underscore how powerful they've been, and it is very illuminating. It pushes growth, whether you like it or not, in a good way. Ultimately, when the dust settles, the company will be a healthier environment when they have a chance to see what's working and what's not working. And you would hope every manager and business owner would want to know what is and what is not working for their business, and then take steps. The times have changed where you say, well, we've been doing it this way for the last 15 years, and you need to be willing to go with the flow and with new changes. And if you're hiring new people, everybody's hired for their skills that they've acquired up to that point, and they might have good ideas for improvement. And when you can empower your employment base and say, we want you to own your job and think of ways to provide better solutions or new processes or streamline something, come with your ideas, people go, really? You want to know what my opinion is? It's a very engaging experience, and people will own their job more, and they will think of ways of making more money for the business, because they are living their job very fully, and it's wonderful. So
people need to be acknowledged. That's part of the whole give and take, and people love to be acknowledged. I remember many years ago, my father worked in Vancouver, and he was a painter by trade, and he worked at this one. He would get his materials at this one particular paint store, and the owner of the paint store was phenomenal. He never forgot anybody's name. If they came in his store once, he never forgot their name. He had this magic memory. But I guess the people would just melt, because they'd walk in if they'd only been in their
Yeah.
books, and he'd acknowledge them by name. And so it is so important that people feel that they are
And that's why
a
people
valuable
leave
part of the team,
organizations
I would
as well,
think.
is they don't feel that they're making a difference. They don't feel validated. And a lot of that comes back down to coaching, where the supervisor is not letting them feel or acknowledge the good work that they do. People don't come to work thinking, today I'm going to screw up. People don't do that for the most part. People want to come to work. They want to do a good job. They want to be an effective member of the team. Of course, there's a few crazies out there that's not the case, but you got to give people the benefit of the doubt, and supervisors need to empower themselves
Right.
with the tools to provide those coaching conversations. And I do that a lot with my clients. When you're a business owner, we're all still people. You just sit on the other side of the desk, and they too want to do the best job, and they cannot perhaps have a confidant or a sounding board of, am I doing this well? How do you think this will be received? They just don't always have that person that they can trust with confidential conversations. They don't do that with their own employees, because they have to be the owner. And I'm a sounding board quite often for my clients that they really appreciate, where validating that they're doing well, or hey, have you thought of it this way, or maybe you want to approach it that way a little bit differently. And it really gives them the tools themselves for they to elevate their management skills and their engagement with their team.
Now, when you do this coaching, Patty, do you typically do it one-on-one, or do you have like
It would depend on the
workshops, or does it
circumstance.
depend on the circumstance?
If I was training a management team, let's say there was 3 or more on, let's say, performance management, I would do that with a group, where I would talk about, this is how to run a performance evaluation. So everybody's hearing the same words, everybody's being told about, because performance evaluations, a lot of times supervisors already have their mind made up who is going to get the best evaluation, and that's not always fair. So we want to make sure that they are doing a fair evaluation, and that perhaps someone who is not the big extrovert, but is just a steady Eddie, effective performer, that they get recognized for their skills versus someone who is the supervisor's favorite. So I would coach in a group setting for that. But a lot of times people come to me with one-on-one situations. I've got a difficult employee. He's been with us for 8 years. He undermines our business model and the way we want to do business. And those are specific cancers in the company, and they absolutely need to be addressed. And that's an extreme example of where somebody had way too much rope for far too long, and they've been running the company, not the president. And so employers need to recognize, if they've got a problem child like that they either need to be a performance improvement plan, what's short term is called a PIP, and we write them up and we get them on the page of what expectations are, and coach them into what needs to stay, what needs to improve, and what definitely needs to stop. And if that doesn't change, then termination might be the next step.
Now, that sounds to me like it's a bit of a tightrope there. Now, in the beginning of our conversation today, you talked about the policy and procedure manual that helps provide that guidebook for any potential litigation down the road, protecting the company. So, as the HR professional brought in because the fellow's been a problem for 8 years and has been getting away with a lot of things, as the HR person, are you brought in to try to mitigate and see if you can find a middle ground and get that employee to be more productive? Or do you give the employer recommendations that maybe you cut your losses here? And because clearly you're not the legal department, you're the HR person. So how does that line
Right.
get walked by you on when the company decides whether to fire the person?
And that's an
cancel litigation
excellent question.
or
Far too often I find managers do not coach on a timely manner, and therefore the situation gets worse, it gets worse, it gets worse, and then they go, I want that person fired. And that's not fair to that employee. So by law, employers need to give employees a chance to improve, and they need to work with them up to undue hardship. And so that's where I come in and I would coach. And undue hardship for one business would be undue hardship completely different for another. And it's based on the size of the business, the profitability, etc. All that comes into play. If you're a small 5-person shop, undue hardship, you'll feel that far sooner than a company that's a multi-million-dollar business. So that's where you need to work with that employee. So, if they've been taking it for 8 years with this employee, we need to find out what's working, what's not, and absolutely do our best to turn that employee around. And while educating that employee that should they not come to these arrangements, and you work with them on a weekly basis after you lay the foundation of what expectations are. And if they do not show improvement in a timely manner, and that can be 4 weeks or 6 weeks or 8 weeks, whatever's agreed upon, then you make decisions after that. And should you decide to terminate, then you've done your due diligence to prove that you've made a full effort to terminate that person in the best manner, or to work with them. And a performance improvement plan is not a guaranteed step to termination. I have turned a lot of people around in a positive way. They just needed that wake-up call of wow, and they go, I really do like it in these 4 walls of this business I work in. I better change my ways. And then they do, and they can change. I also like to challenge managers and say, if you can get 10% more productivity out of your current employee base, what would that mean to your bottom line? I always think about business, and I think about return on investment, your ROI, and how we can get people productive and profitable for you. And that's one of the things as well. So, coaching that comes into to that area. So it has been the most fulfilling time of my career. I feel like I'm really making a difference with the clients that I work with. I have the back of their business. I promote their brand. I hear what is of their message, and I relay said messages to the employees in my own words, but it is their message. And I also, of course, am that go-between through.
Hello?
Hi.
Hi. Hi. I'm just going to jump in here and say, technology is a wonderful thing except for when it doesn't work. And unfortunately, this Skype recording kind of dropped in the middle of what Patty was sharing with us here. So maybe we could just go back. Patty, you were talking about the value that you bring to your clients and how proud you are of it. And we kind of
Sure.
lost part of that.
Sure. So I was saying that I have never loved my job more, seeing the way I can help businesses and people. I've had the pleasure of hiring people twice in their career, and that's awesome. And I've also had the pleasure of really seeing businesses skyrocket and take off. What I was talking about from HR is it's not a fluffy service that you just need to keep compliant and keep your files and all of that. That's not what HR is in my mind. HR is a professional partner that works with all of the whole team in alignment with their values and their value proposition and their business model, and work shoulder to shoulder with the supervisors and the managers, providing the best value and counsel and observation to ensure that they are rolling out the best practices. There's so many good stories of where you can improve engagement, where you can improve growth, where you can improve the bottom line. And on the flip side too, where I can help managers and say, we need to make changes with some of the employees. Let's get more productive employees for you. Or, the way the growth has been with the business, we need more skills in this particular area. And we just look at the health of the business. one other thing that I do have is $1 million in errors and emissions insurance as an independent consultant. It is something that I feel is important for businesses to know, that should we partner, that I have their back, and I also have their legal back. And I also am very strong in labor laws and employment laws. I do educate myself frequently in current Alberta and Canadian laws, as well as some U.S. laws as well. And there has not been a time where I said to myself, I did not know that. So I'm happy to say that I'm pretty solid on labor laws. And with all the terminations I've done, and I feel I've done around 55-ish terminations in my 16 years. Last year was my first termination for cause. Whereas where I always counsel and say, you don't have a paper trail that's strong enough to terminate for cause. We need to go with no just cause. But in this particular case, we actually went for cause. I helped ensure that their documentation was very, very thorough and solid. I wrote up the termination letter, and I even had an employment lawyer that's in my network. He read the letter and he said there was nothing to change. If anything, he said I might just take out these few sentences, and I chose to leave them on because I wanted that letter to be as comprehensive as possible should it go to a lawyer, and there was nothing that he could have done about it. So it was one of those difficult situations. I've addressed, oh my gosh, people issues. I've had stalking. I've had sexual harassment. I've had gender discrimination. I've had gender realignment. I had an individual say, I'm turning 50 and in October I'm going to become a woman. And then that situation got out of control where everybody was tippy-toeing on that person's, recognizing that person's rights, that person was actually not respecting the rights of everybody else on the team. And their coaching needed to come for that. I've addressed violence in the workplace. I've addressed return to work programs if somebody had a health event and they're coming back to work. I've seen a lot, and I don't know of a lot of people that can say they've had such unique exposure to different situations. And it's not to say I like it, but I don't mind it, I guess, because I always want to take the best care of the business and the people involved. And if that means somebody does have to leave, then it is done with the most kindness, the most fairness, and it is for the best interest of the company and the employee.
Well, that's great. And of course, the exposure to those sorts of situations ensures that you are very well rounded and understand some of the complexities and some of the things that can enter into and poison a workspace environment. So now, probably what you find, I know that in my business as a marketing strategist and a marketing expert, a lot of businesses, small and medium-sized businesses, typically like to think that they can do all of their marketing themselves. And I'm the first to admit that it's not necessarily rocket science to do marketing, but you do have to have commitment, you do have to have consistency, and you do have to know how to communicate. And people who are focusing on their core business typically don't have time to become an expert in marketing, which is kind of my song sheet. I expect that probably to some degree you experience the same thing, because I know that you've educated me a lot on the width and the breadth of what a human resource professional actually is doing that adds value to your company. So I'm sure that you have also had that experience, and maybe you could also share, I mean, the cost of obtaining a good, solid, sound employee probably is massive compared to working to keep good employees
Absolutely.
happy.
And just to echo what you were saying, Nancy, is you're a marketing expert. That's your thing. You've been doing that for years. You've got a lot of breadth and exposure to current trends. This is your wheelhouse. And smart businesses recognize when it's time to outsource. And smart businesses would also recognize when it's time to outsource an HR professional. a president, while they may be a fantastic engineer, or they may be a fantastic lawyer, or whatever, software developer, the types of clients, that's their wheelhouse. And are they going to do the best service for themselves and the business to screen resumes? And whereas I have screened thousands and thousands of resumes, so what where I add value from a hiring point of view is I'm by the hour. I'm not a staffing firm, and that's where my business model is different. A staffing firm, they charge, I know the market's different, but let's say it's between 15 and 25% of the first year's annual salary. Then they send you all the resumes. You still have to interview those candidates that they send to you. You decide who you like. Then they put out the offer, and then you have to dish out 15 to 25% of the first year's annual salary while you did all the work. Where I come into play is I work on site at your office as an extension of your team under your brand. The candidates that I interview, they don't know that I'm not part of your team, and I am by the hour. So I'm a smoking deal compared to a staffing firm, and I'm adding far more value because I'm properly vetting out the right candidates. I'm very solid in my technical interviewing. I feel, how do I have the right to hire somebody if I don't know intimately what they need to be doing to earn that job? And that's where a lot of my clients really appreciate it, is I really understand what their requirements are, and I'm on site. And as I say, I'm not even close to 15% of the first year's annual salary, and I'm on site. And the reason why I do that, people might go, well, does she really add value? Is she really as good as she says? And I would say, yes, I am that good. I've hired almost 1,000 people in my 16 years. I have over 90% retention of the people that I've hired. So, I don't just interview people because they're nice, and I determine, do they have the skills and the competencies to get the job. I've even had presidents say, I like that person. They were so enthusiastic. They just were great. And I said, enthusiasm doesn't equal qualified. And I challenged them on that as well. And I say they couldn't give me proud achievements. They had too much job hopping. They're not solid in this technical part that we need. And I debrief with that. And presidents really appreciate that they're not hiring on gut feel, it's that these people are being properly vetted. And I'm a very big believer that hiring is so important, because you are adding people to your team that will add value and hopefully productivity and make you money. We're not all nonprofit, and we're not all churches. And let's be honest, people are in it to make a dollar. And that's what it's important to be able to have a solid process to interview. On the flip side as well, a president, you want to look at, let's say, what his hourly rate should be, or is, and is his time best, or her time best, used in vetting out resumes, or even doing part of these interviews, when they could be out doing more higher level work to help brand their business, meet with clients, etc. So they need to also, what I call healthy selfishness, recognize when it's of more value to bring in outside expertise in-house for a specific reason, and they could still keep all their fingers in the pulse of the business that they own.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I see that we're running out of time here. I think that what you have done, Patty, is certainly, I'll speak for myself. You've certainly educated me on exactly why small and medium-sized businesses can benefit very strongly from bringing in yourself and your company to help them with their HR issues. Would you please share with our audience how they can find you on the internet, and any other way that you'd like to share?
Absolutely. My business name is MillerNet HR Solutions. My website is www.millernet.ca. You can find me on LinkedIn under Patty Miller. That's Miller. And yeah, all of my contact details are on my website. All of my services and what I do is on my website. And I would be happy to talk to anybody about their business. And I thank you greatly for taking the time to chat with me. And I think you are an amazing marketing professional, and your clients are lucky to have you.
Well, thank you so much for that endorsement there, Patty. I really certainly appreciate you sharing your knowledge with not just myself, but our listening audience as well. And I think that you have helped to educate many of us today. So thank you so
Thank
much
you
for
very
joining
much. Have a
us.
super day. All right. Bye bye.
Thank you, you too.